me down, no. You won't let me down, you won't let me down, no. You won't let me down, you won't let me down. You never let me down. My faith, my hope, my life in your hands. I won't be shaken. You're a firm foundation. My faith, my hope, my life in your hands. I won't be shaken. I won't be shaken. You're a firm foundation. You're a firm foundation. You won't let me down. You won't let me down, no. Say you won't let me down, no. You won't let me down, no. You won't let me down, no. Yeah. You won't let me down, no. You won't let me down, say. You never let me down. You've been so good to us. You won't let me down. All my faith is in you. All my trust is in you. All my hope is in you. You will never let me down. Say, all my faith is in you. You say, all my trust is in you. All my hope is in you. You will never let me. You will never let me. Say, all my faith is in you. All my trust. All my trust is in you. All my hope is in you. You will never. You will never. Lord, you're faithful. Repeat after me. Let's go. You will never let me down. Say, you will never. You've been so good. You will never let me down. You will never let me down. You will never let me think back over my life. Say what you're praying for. You will never let me down. You will never let me down. All I gotta do is look back. All I gotta do is look back and see all you've done for me. All I gotta do is look back. All I gotta do is look back and see all you've done for me. Let's clap. 1, 2, hey. Praise in the valley, praise on the mountain. Yeah. I praise when I'm short, praise when I'm down. I praise when I'm numbered, praise when surrounded. 'Cause praise is the water my enemies drowning. As long as I'm breathing, I've got a reason to praise the Lord, oh my soul. Oh, praise the Lord, oh my soul. Yeah. I praise when I feel it, and I praise when I don't. I praise 'cause I know you're still in control. 'Cause my praise is a weapon. It's more than a sound. More than a sound. Oh, my praise is the shout brings Jericho down. Oh, as long as I'm breathing, I've got a reason to praise the Lord. Oh, my soul, so I'm gonna praise the Lord. Oh, my soul.
Hello, everybody. Jason Scales here. Thank you for tuning in to our online Bible study. If it's your first time, thank you for tuning in. If you attend consistently, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. It is tough for many people to get into a brick and mortar building on a Wednesday night to attend Bible study, and you use this as a platform to build your faith. Thank you for doing that. You have a lot of things going on in your life, and you need faith in God. You need biblical literacy. You need faith in his word to live the God kind of life. And I pray that you are entering into one of the greatest seasons of your life and that you're using your faith to do incredible things. God bless you.
All right. Welcome in. I'm letting you guys get settled. You know, we start at 6:55 with the music, 7 o'clock with our session. I'm so excited for tonight's session. I am Trisha. I'm one of the campus leaders here for Believers Faith Fellowship Online Campus. So like the video just said, like Pastor Jason just said, if this is your first time here, or if you're a regular watcher, thank you for coming back. You know, we've been doing some rewind series across the month of January. And now for the month of love, we have our very own Pastor J and Lady B. I'm going to bring them on stage.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. So listen, guys, if you are watching on our website, or if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook, or anything like that, go ahead and leave us a little emoji love. Put some hearts in the chat. It's the month of love. Put some hearts in the chat. Let us know where you're at. If you have questions, we can see all of your questions. We can see all of your comments. So if you tuned in, you know that this session is going to be about love and marriage, the grown-up edition 2.0. Lady B, we took it from her. We took the title from her because she's been posting a lot about this and sharing a lot about this. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into the session. If you have some questions along the way, throw them in the chat. We will be able to see them. Hey, listen, if God is laying something on your heart or somebody on your heart to invite to this, invite them. Invite them. It's going to be a great session. So I'm going to give you like 35 seconds to do that. Share the stream. Put it on their DMs. It will be available for replay, but invite them in now. We want to see them live. Okay, so we're going to kick off with the icebreaker. I'm going to bring Lady B and Pastor Jason back on stage. I don't think they ever really left, but let's do it.
Can you see this? There you go.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to remove myself, but you guys will still be able to hear me. So if you guys know, we're gonna play a 5-question newlywed game.
Oh my goodness.
All right. So are you guys ready?
Go for it.
Let's go.
All right. Let me take myself off of here and give it to you guys. I think I haven't done this in a while, so give me a second. Let me see. Well, you guys just have to see us all because I don't think you're able to hear me when I am backstage. I don't think so.
We can't hear you. Okay.
All right, so we'll just do it this way. Okay, so the first question is for Lady B. So actually, yeah, both of you have to answer, but Lady B, you answer first. Okay. All right.
Okay.
What is Pastor J's go-to comfort food when he's feeling stressed out or under the weather?
What is his comfort food? Do you?
Uh-huh.
He doesn't have a comfort food, actually. He doesn't have one.
He just likes all the food.
He just likes all the food. He's a foodie. He likes all the food. Depends on what he's feeling like that day, or if he's trying to eat healthy that day. That's what it depends on. So he doesn't have one. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't eat for comfort. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So we all know if you've been at BFF for 5 seconds, you know that Pastor Jay is a words of affirmation person. So we're going to flip it around. Pastor Jay, what is Lady B's favorite way to receive a compliment?
Favorite way to see what?
To receive a compliment.
Favorite way to receive a compliment. She likes physical touch. And she likes to be complimented on how she looks. And when she puts her hard work into something, she wants to know that it was well received. So she loves feedback.
I do.
Okay. 2 for 2. This is lovely. Back to you,
Give me a
Lady
hand.
B.
I do.
If
I love
Pastor Jay
absolutely
could
love
have,
feedback.
yes. If Pastor Jay could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Any superpower? Probably to sing at the drop of a hat. That's what I would say. His superpower would be sing.
I really
Pastor
want to
Jay,
be
is
a
that
gangster
right?
rapper.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I really want to be a gangster rapper.
Gang, gang. Gang, gang. Okay. All right. So back to Pastor Jay. What is Lady B's most prized possession where sentimental value counts more than money?
Prized possession. So prized possession are not, for me, when I see her, it's not a tangible thing, but it's her ideas.
Yeah.
She puts great pride in the ideas. And because when she has an idea, she builds it and she wants it to have great impact.
I love it.
That's on point.
All right. So, final question to Lady B. Lady B,
Yes.
what is the most embarrassing song that Pastor Jay secretly loves to sing along to? Since you teed us up with your superpower, wanting to be a gangster rapper or having singing ability.
Oh, babe.
Right.
What's that song? Yeah, that
Answer prayer.
that's it. That's it right there. I couldn't think of it because he makes up his own songs, Trisha,
And they also
and they all sound alike. But that is, I know that God will answer prayer. He said,
Bishop Frank Anton White has a song out now, and it says, "I know God will answer prayer. I know God will answer prayer."
but all his songs sound the exact same, like same tune, same note, every single one of them.
Same key, same track.
What's the matter? That's what it's gonna
I
be
love
like.
it. I love it. So that was our little icebreaker to warm us
That
up
was
for
fun.
what you guys are about to get into for
That
love
was
and
fun, Trisha.
marriage.
That was fun.
Yeah, for love and marriage, the grown-up edition. So, Lady B, take us into a little background on how you started writing about love and marriage and sharing about love and marriage.
You know, I did it we were getting ready to have our 21st anniversary. And so I really wanted to honor that in a really special way about, things that we've learned over our 21 years, but not to act like we know it all because we don't, because we're still learning each other even after 21 years. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk about things that I felt like that was important for us as we were doing this journey of marriage together and really help other people along the way. And so I said, hey, Jason, I want to do these 21 things. And so we actually did it together. I said, here are some of the things that I think, and he gave me some of the things that he thought. And that's how the 21 days, love and marriage came about, like the grown-up edition, because I really wanted to talk about grown-up issues and grown-up things. And that's kind of how I started.
Absolutely.
Grown-up issues and grown-up things. So, AKA, you guys are about to get some strong meat tonight. Hopefully you get a little laughs, but ultimately we get a behind the scenes look at the power couple, the first couple of our wonderful, wonderful, beautiful community. And we're going to walk through some questions. So like I mentioned on the chat, if you have any questions that you want to add to, they can see your comments as well. But if you have any questions that you want to add to or something that you're thinking about as this conversation evolves, please feel free to do it. If you're watching over on the website, you can put your questions in there as well. They may not see your comments real time, but I will make sure that we get them answered. So we'll start a little light and easy. Here's the question to you guys. Many couples enter marriage with certain expectations. They have some realistic expectations and maybe some not so realistic expectations. What were your initial experiences or your initial expectations of marriage? and how did they actually compare to when you got married and got into it?
You go. No, you go first. Go ahead.
My initial expectations of marriage, I I thought I knew myself, but I really didn't know myself the way I did. I thought I was always just laid back, easygoing. I don't like to argue a lot. I thought I was very simple and easy to please, but I found out I'm not. I like certain things, and that's what I like. And I'm married to somebody who likes to try a whole bunch of stuff. So it stretched me. And so marriage was a stretch from the beginning. Here's the crazy part. We dated 3 years and never lived in the same city.
Right.
And so, man, that was the first time we had ever lived. We did long distance. That was the first time we'd ever lived in the same city when we got married. So not only do you have to go through the newlywed phase, you got to learn how to be in the same city and see each other every day outside of talking. So, man, it was a good stretch. It was a stretch.
You know, Trisha, I remember this. I remember I was sitting there, me and my mother-in-law, Sheila, Mimi, aka Mimi. We went to Walmart together. And so I wanted to cook his favorite meal because he talks about how simple he is. And so I wanted to do something very, as a wife, cook his favorite meal. And I remember that we were in Walmart. So I asked Mimi, I said, hey, Mimi, give me something that Jason really, really likes that I can cook. And so she said, get him roast beef. He loves roast beef. Pork roast, pot roast. And so I was like, oh, great, he likes pot roast. I like pot roast too. So I got pot roast, made it. And so I was like, I was all excited, so happy. And when I got home and cooked it, do you remember this, babe? And he was like,
what is this?
What is this? It's your favorite meal. And he was like, who told you that? And so I said, what's your favorite meal? And he was like, you have to eat anything that
whatever my mama cooked. She thought it was my favorite because whatever she cooked, we had to eat. We couldn't order Domino's. You couldn't order pizza. You just go to bed hungry. Or you have to sit there. Yeah.
So yeah, it was funny because he said that he was easy, but he really wasn't easy because he really just stuck to one thing. I think for me, one of the things, Trisha, that my expectations, to be honest with you, and I don't know if my sister or my brothers would say this, but I'm going to say it because I really never really heard my parents argue. If they did argue, I never heard it. I'm sure they disagree with each other. I see my mother get upset and my dad get upset, but I've never seen them argue in front of us. And so for me, I went into these expectations that was going to be the same for us. And so when we did have high volume discussions, it kind of threw me back a little bit because I never really saw how that should be handled because I never saw my parents go through that. So that was my expectation of thinking that it wasn't going to happen. And we still sometimes have high volume discussions.
I don't know why she was surprised either because we had several high volume discussions the whole time we were dating. So I don't know what she thought was going to change.
Because we were married. It was different. Trish, you muted.
You muted, Trisha.
Yeah, the screen was like, hey, sis, you're talking, but we can't hear you. I think that happens a lot where you're like, hey, I know we experienced this before, but quite possibly something might be different on the other side, or maybe we both mature through the ceremony somehow.
Right.
The 45-minute ceremony and the reception mature into these other people who are a little bit more developed and capable of handling these conversations.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the biggest, that's a good lead in to this question. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about marriage that you've encountered either personally or when you've been counseling other people? I'm sure there has to be many, but maybe some of the ones that consistently come up.
Yeah. Trisha, I think one of the biggest things, people fall in love with the idea of being in love. And you fall in love with a concept and you find a person to play a role in that fantasy that you have. And then you get into that fantasy and you find out, this is not what I thought. And the Bible says the two shall become one flesh. I don't think there's such a thing as the one that you're supposed to marry. I think you find someone compatible and you make it work. In every season of your life, you're constantly changing. And so when you fall in love with this idea of being in love, many people are not in love with the person that they're with. They're in love with the idea of being in love. And so that screws up marriage because you expect to be happy every day. You expect everyone to be hunky-dory. And the reality, marriage has an assignment. You guys have your two purposes combining to do great things, and you get to experience and enjoy each other along that journey. And so you can't just be in love with the idea of being in love. And when you do, you're setting yourself up for failure because that's a fantasy.
Right. I've seen where individuals, sometimes I feel like people think that getting married is their purpose in life. And maybe it may be, but that's not, even before you got married, you as an individual, God ordained you and you have a purpose. And so these two purposes are coming together. And so I think the misconception for some people is, okay, marriage is it, and that's my purpose. And then, what do we do from here? But that really isn't all that is. You have an individual purpose that you guys are both blending together to make one purpose. And I always tell people, where purpose is unknown, whether it's purpose unknown for you individually, abuse is inevitable. That's Miles Monroe. But if you don't understand your purpose in marriage, abuse is inevitable as well. And so I think it's so important that, yes, marriage, you want to get married, but your marriage is a purpose. But that should not be the only thing, that getting married is the purpose. You have marriage and something to do within that marriage for purpose.
I think it's absolutely important for a person and for people to discover who they are, their identity first, and their purpose first before you get married.
Absolutely.
Because it's miserable when you marry someone who doesn't know who they are. Their identity becomes the marriage.
Absolutely.
Their identity becomes wrapped up in being a wife, being a mother, and you can lose yourself, and then something's missing.
That's
and you're not completing each other because one is so wrapped up in the other. You gotta have, it's great. What makes a power couple is not to just get along all the time. It's that when two powers combine, a couple, they both know who they are, and they decide, hey, we can do great things separately, but we can do better together.
Yeah.
And that's what it should look like.
This is incredible. I don't know if, they say your gifts make room for you. And we know that y'all are both ministers, but y'all are preaching on tonight, okay? Y'all are preaching on tonight. Whether you're talking about people coming in as whole individuals or making sure that they don't lose themselves in a marriage, especially with how fast life moves and how much information and how rapid the speed of change is in virtually every area of life. I think that sometimes people want time to slow down and to cling to, okay, well, this is my security, this is my sense of safety, and so I'm not going to say stagnate, but I'm gonna like stay in my safe space and not actually challenge myself to really define myself, to really chase my purpose, to really understand that, I may not have it figured out, but even in the not figuring it out, even in the not having it figured out, I can still take a step to figure it out and then to become who I need to be in the present time and in the future for said husband, said wife, or said family. So this raises an interesting point about more misconception. How can couples really avoid some of those pitfalls? Like, there might be somebody out there who's like, girl, yes, this is I need to send this to my husband, or I need to send this to my friend so they can replay this for their marriage. How can they avoid pitfalls and focusing on just the negative and actually say, okay, well, these are misconceptions. We can have maybe not a high volume conversation, but a medium volume conversation, and actually address it so that they can start to experience some of that growth, or start to experience what comes on the other side of discovery.
Yeah. Trisha, I don't think many people have as many marriage problems as they think they do. I think people with problems get married and they blame the marriage for their personal problems. We bring immaturity, we bring selfishness, we bring insecurity, we bring control issues. These things that we don't work on before marriage. We're in the gym, we're working out, losing weight, you're getting your hair done, all these things. But we bring all of this stuff into a marriage, and our marriage suffers because of our immaturity, because of our lack of discipline. And then the marriage suffers because we don't work on these personal things. And all of us have to address the things inside of us, because we all bring a story, we bring a script, we bring all of this to a marriage. And when you don't address it, it's easy to project it. And here's the thing, it's because relationships are the mirrors by which we see ourselves, and that your partner, the person you're married to, is the best person to help you address those things. But the reality is, when they address them in us, we tend to attack what we see in them. And then you have a marriage problem, which started with a personal problem.
I can't even expound on that. I think that's perfect right there. You can't go any more than that. That's it. That's the mic drop.
And the hardest thing for us to do, I know it is for me, I can't speak for anybody else, is to look in the mirror when you're having challenges. You ask yourself, what is it that I need to change? Because I can't control her. I tried, it doesn't work. All right. She can't control me. I can only fix me and learn to lead and get influence. And I have to build credibility to be able to speak into her life because I got to own my issues before I address hers.
Yeah.
Mm. That is so good. You, first of all, yes, the whole thing. When you mention that we bring stories and we bring scripts and we bring our projections, and then you followed it up by saying, "Hey, I still have to build credibility with this other individual so I can speak into their life, and so that we can begin this uh, beautiful partnership of growth." What are some ways where people who might be in the thick of it, right? They're in the thick of that conflict. They're in the thick of like, "Ooh, I'm projecting these stories, or I'm replaying a story in my mind, or I have a script that I don't know is going on in my mind, or maybe even in my life." How can they look for green flags inside of their partner, or inside of these conversations, or inside of um, I want to call them debates, but they say you have the same argument over and over again. You can have it over and over again. So how can people look for the green flags to get that escape route out of what might be going on and what might actually be repetitive and they don't realize it?
Facts, if we don't mind, because I think, go ahead.
Yeah, it was.
I think I want to go back a little bit, Trisha, if you don't mind, really talking about conflict, right? Because I think conflict is so huge, and people really don't know how to handle conflict, effectively.
That is true.
And so I think one of the things that, when you think about conflict, before we can get to the green flags, how do I handle? Because conflict's going to happen. We have conflict on a day-to-day basis. Conflict is going on in our nation right now. And so how do you handle this conflict within your marriage? And one of the things that has really helped or can help is the I statements. I am a so component on I statements. So Jason and I did a session this weekend, and we talked about healthy and unhealthy relationships. And I brought up the I statements. And I statements is if you're in conflict with one another, if you're always saying, you did this, you are this, and you are this, and this is how you make me feel, then that person's going to automatically start pushing up their hand like, wait a minute. And they're going to come back at you in a different way. But it really isn't about, it is about that person, but it really isn't about that person because it's how you're feeling in that moment. So I like to use I statements when I can, because I statements put it back on me. I'm feeling this way in this moment. So you want to give an example, Jason? Let's give an example. Give me something that you feel like I struggle with.
Let's see. I use the one that I used the weekend. I enjoy being on time. If something starts at 7, I can be there at 6:30 to be prepared. It puts me in a bad spot, and I feel rushed when we're late. And then I address it with you, and you get mad at me for addressing it with you. So I got this tension going into the meeting, and so it puts me in a bad spot. Going places when I walk into it, I'm frustrated, and we're into it, whatever, when we're late.
So what he just did was he used I'm not going to come back at him and feel like, he's not saying that you make me late and you make me feel uncomfortable. He's saying, this is how I feel when I go into the situation. And so those are I statements. It kind of put the onus back on you because it really is about your behavior and how it's making you feel and not the other person. So I like to use I statements in that way. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that very well.
Yeah, bam.
It does. It does.
And then it always helps too, Trisha. When you talked about seeing the green, affirming those things. Number one, you got to know what you're looking for when you go into a relationship. You're not in love with the idea of being loved. You know what's compatible for you. You're talking about celebrating green flags. So know what you're looking for in a relationship that's compatible for you. And that when you see it, you celebrate it. Mm-hmm. And there has to be more than just a physical attraction. There are certain things that has to be non-negotiables, and like, oh man, this does it for me. I like it when a person owns their mistakes. I love it when a person apologizes. I love it when they're responsible. I love when they handle money well. And then you acknowledge those when that person does it, and not just correcting when they do something wrong.
That definitely makes a ton of sense. And I don't know about you guys. I'm a note taker, so I have some notes that I've been jotting down. Obviously, anybody can go back and watch the replay. But if you are taking notes, go ahead and be like me. Join my tribe. Come on my side of the aisle, and let's take notes together while we're getting these gems, because God might be downloading something for you specifically while they're talking that won't be in the replay, maybe quite as present as it is right now. So with staying within that framework of the green flag, and kind of circling back to this, I might not be able to hear you because I'm too wrapped up and too engrossed in the busyness of life. How can couples, because you said people have to know what they're looking for, and then they have to be, I'm inferring this, you have to have some capacity to be able to see it, right? How can couples prioritize emotional intimacy and connection to be able to kind of get back to a place that maybe they're not quite there yet because of the schedule, or because priorities have shifted in a particular season? It's the top of the year, everybody's striving and grinding and doing all the things. So how can that be more of a priority for couples in this season?
Before we talk about intimacy, do you want to go? Because I know you're going to say something. You want to say something first? You're going to say something.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to point out. The healthy and knowing what a healthy and healthy relationship is.
So I think it's so important. Just going to the green flags again. I know I keep going back, Trisha, but look, I'm so sorry. We're going to go back a little bit. I think when you're thinking about those green flags, it's so important that couples understand the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships. And that's a whole nother topic that we can talk about. Matter of fact, we talk about that this weekend as well, as establishing the difference between what's a healthy relationship look like, and what are the traits of a healthy relationship, like respect, right? Trust, honesty, right? Those are aspects of a healthy relationship. There's so many more, but then what are some traits of unhealthy relationships, and really what does that look like? And when you understand the difference between that, if a person understands what's a healthy relationship, that is a green flag. If they know this is healthy, this is what a healthy relationship looks like, I've looked at it, I've studied it. Not that they won't sometimes have unhealthy traits that comes up, because they can, but really looking at what are healthy relationships and what are unhealthy. And if people know that and understand that, that is so helpful in any relationship, whether it's friendships or partners.
And one of the things I believe is healthy in every relationship, because you are a person before you are a wife or a husband. It's to make sure that you're full, because you can't give what you do not have.
Right.
So every person needs time to recharge, where you need some space so you can rebuild who you are, because you'll lose your identity in being a wife, being a mother, being a husband. So you need friends, you need time alone, and you got to appreciate that with each other. You can't smother each other, or you necessarily just can't push each other away, but you need that space to recharge, to be good for each other, because that keeps things alive and happening. Because it's nothing like being lifeless in a marriage when you're not full yourself. You're trying to give something you don't have. That's the concept of debt, and you're pulling from one place to another. So you got to have time to recharge and do things. Barbara goes to work out. She loves to do certain things. That's her time.
Right.
So we give her space, and she comes back a better person. She hangs out with her friends. That makes her a better person. And you got to create space for stuff like that.
Personal recharge is so important, because it will allow you to fill up that cup that you like, whatever you like to do. And you can't, when you're not recharged, you are basically pouring out of an empty cup, and your spouse and your partner is going to realize that. So it's so important that you take time to recharge in the moments you need to recharge, and whatever that looks like for you.
Man, this guy, when I was with ministry, he told me this. He said, Jason, your church will only be as fresh as you are.
Yeah.
And if you're burnt out, your church is going to be burnt out. It's the same way for marriage. Your marriage will only be as fresh as you are. So if you are experiencing burnout, it could be a time that you need to, go recharge, figure out what it is that you love, what it is that drives you, what is your purpose, what's God speaking in your life, then bring that back to the table and see, how can we make this thing work together?
And then at that point, you're bringing yourself back. You're bringing yourself, your healthy self, back to that partnership, right? Because you are energized. Whatever it is, you've been energized in that moment. And then you're able to, some people say, well, if you're separated and you do things separate, you're going to grow apart. No, hopefully that's going to help you grow closer together. Although you're doing things individually, you're going to come back and still come as a partner and work out things together as partnership. But you need that time to recharge, whatever that looks like for you.
There was something that attracted every person to their spouse. And it's very easy to lose what attracted that person to you in the marriage if you don't keep that thing fresh.
Yep.
They loved your just your vigor. They loved your drive. They love your ideas. They love your creativity. But it's easy to lose that being married. So you always got to keep that thing alive and fresh. You got to keep that gift of you, because you bring that to the marriage. When my brother got married, they did the unity candle, and this is the first time I'd ever seen this done. So normally when we take the unity candle, you have one candle here, one candle there. They light the middle and blow out the ones on the outside. The pastor said, listen, don't blow out your individual flames. He said, keep your individual flames going and the one in the middle, because you never want to lose who you are. You never want to lose your personal fire, because that's what keeps you going. And I think what happens sometimes in marriages, you could have one on fire and the marriage can be on fire and that person is burnt out.
Right. So
you got to make sure that each person is stay wired up and that each person stays going. Because again, people don't have as many marriage problems as they think they do. We have personal problems that we bring into the marriage, and the marriage suffers because of our personal problems.
Come on, babe. That's good.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Trisha.
Trisha, you're on mute.
Sure am. I'm going to put it together. Or we can get one of our wonderful volunteers who can just run tech just behind the scenes. It would be wonderful.
But come on, volunteers. Come on.
Yes, volunteers. I was going to say, you guys are preaching, and thank you so much. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. The one thing that you mentioned that I wanted to talk about, and maybe let some pressure out of the room for a quick second, is because this is weighty, right? It's weighty, and I want people to be able to digest it. So I want to give them time to chew on what you just shared. You mentioned several times in different ways about how you can't give what you don't have. The majority of the time we hear this is when we talk about introverts versus extroverts, and how introverts need to come away from people to be able to recharge, versus extroverts need to be around people in order to really get their fill and to be really charged up. Now, we heard that old saying, the opposites attract. So, Lady B, Pastor J, who's who? Are you both introverted? Are you both extroverted? Who's who?
So there's this thing called ambivert. And I used to think that I was extroverted, you guys. Ambivert's kind of like a mixture. And so I truly found out later in life that I am not truly an extrovert. I am an ambivert, because I need to be on when I'm on, and I love being around people, but then I also need time to recharge and be to myself. And I'm okay with that. So I'm an ambivert, almost extrovert, I guess, leaning towards extrovert, but really an ambivert.
And I am a true introvert. And here's the thing about introverts. Introverts doesn't mean that you're timid. It doesn't mean you're afraid of crowds. Right. It doesn't mean it just means that's how you recharge. I recharge by myself. So I love being at church on Sundays. I love being around people, but it's like my battery's depleting the whole time I'm around people. You probably been talking to me and you said like, all right, he's winding down. Yeah. I got to go plug back up and then I'll jump back in. That's just the way I recharge. And I am the true introvert. She's the extrovert. She likes
extrovert, ambivert.
Ambivert. She does that like when we go to a restaurant. She never orders straight off the menu. She gonna mix and match and put it in. So that's her personality right there.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I see. Sarita says she's an ambivert too.
Yes. But let me tell you, I remember, for those who maybe are newlyweds, I remember when we first got married. And we talked all the time, like for 3 years, like he said, we dated on long distance. So we talked all the time, and we were talking like he talked, I talked, and we talked all the time. Well, when we got married, he had talked out at work. So when he got home, he had to recharge. And I'm sitting up here like, wait a minute, sir. Yeah. I need some time. You need to talk to me. You need to wake up. But he was like, he needed to recharge. And the first 6 months of our marriage, maybe a year of our marriage, I did not understand that. I'm like, this man is something. And it wasn't. I just had to learn that he had given all he could at work for a little bit. He had to come home and kind of recharge, and then he would be back to himself. But that was a whole issue.
I remember one of the first, one of the first Friday nights after we got married. She wasn't working when we first came. Barbara walked away from an incredible job to move up here to Tennessee, and she rebuilt it back. But I remember that Friday night, I worked hard that week, and it was a rough week. I came home, And I remember it was the first night of I don't know, it was a game on a Lakers game or something like that. I laid on the bed, cut the TV light off, and watched TV. And she like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm watching TV." She's ready to go out. I'm like, for what? Like, so we had to figure that thing out of how to work together here. She's ready to go out, and I'm ready to shut it down.
Yeah, yeah. So just for those newlyweds, just know that may happen. Be prepared for it. Talk about it.
It takes a little bit. It takes a little bit. I see we have some ambiverts, some introverts in the chat. I feel like if the extroverts, if a lot of extroverted people were in there, they would already been typing in. Just given the nature of how extroverts kind of tend to roll. So we're gonna kind of, now that y'all had a little break to process some of the heavy stuff that they were saying, we're gonna jump right back into it. So we talked a little bit, kind of subtly about how couples can prioritize intimacy, but can we sit there a little bit longer? So how can couples really prioritize it? Because with different needs and different seasons, I don't know if people have a lot of language. And I'll say this, I saw a really interesting clip, and it was a therapist, and she was saying how we have mental health ourselves into this weird area where people use mental health labels as a way to avoid doing the hard work. And that they'll say, well, I'm this. And so then they don't actually go do the hard work. And her whole point was basically saying, when you are mentally healthy, that doesn't mean you avoid hard situations. That means that you have the tools to actually take on these challenges and to not shut down or spiral or any of the other things that you would normally do. So in talking about emotional intimacy and connection to your spouse or your significant other, it can be a hard conversation, especially if somebody feels disconnected or they feel like they are disjointed, or there might be competing priorities. So how can couples reprioritize that? And how can maybe couples who feel like, oh, I got to bring this up and I don't really have language, or I don't really know how to do that?
Yeah. Intimacy, one of the biggest fallacies is that intimacy is sex. I know a lot of people having sex, they're not intimate. Yeah. Intimacy is into me, you see. There's two things. You got to want to see into me, and I got to let you. So I've got to let you into seasons of my life. I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago. I'm not the same person I was when my purpose is the same, but I've grown up, I've changed, I'm different. And it's allowing people into those seasons of your life, allowing them to walk that journey. A lot of us will say, man, they don't know me, but do you allow them to get to know you? Allow them to know your insecurities. I try to be pretty honest about my insecurities, about where I am, my emotions. You can't remain a mystery in marriage.
Right.
You can't remain a mystery and like keep your emotions and stuff to yourself and expect it to work out. So a key to intimacy is allowing that person to see into you, being vulnerable, being willing to get hurt, being willing to get disappointed, doing all the stuff like that, so that they are very aware of where you are. And I think that's humongous, that you cannot be a mystery in marriage and expect somebody to read your mind, because I'm not anointed to read her mind. Right. I'm not, and neither is she anointed to read mine.
I think one of the things that, they talk about love languages, right? And that is really important. I think we need to know each other's love language when you're talking about intimacy, because it's so much more, like you said, than just sex. Jason and I just talked about this the other day, actually. We were talking about our love languages. And one of the things, I was watching this podcast, because I like podcasts. And so I was watching this podcast, and they just happened to be talking about relationships on this podcast. And one of the things they said was, in order for you to remain and become intimate with your partner, you need to make sure that you're touching them at least 6 times a day, right? Some people say 12, some people said 12 times a day. But this person, we did some research, and it was 6 times a day. And so I was talking to Jason about that, and I was like, it's more than just, okay, that's your 6 times and then you're done, right? But then when we start talking about what that looks like, for me, physical touch is one of my touches.
And I do not want to be touched.
And he does not want to be, well, you don't want to be touched in some ways. But some ways he does want to be touched, okay? But for him, the touch for him is conversation. That's his touch. He likes having conversation. So talking throughout the day, having conversation about things that is important to him, whether it's about the church, whether it's about FCA, whether it's about what's going, that's his touch.
Yeah.
And so it may not be a physical touch, but it is a touch. And so he's touching me with conversation. For me, it may be him actually touching me, whether it's touching my arm, or another touch for me is when I come home and the house is clean. That's a touch for me, right? Because that's my love language. And so just being understanding in order for that intimacy to continue, really understanding what that love language is for your partner, and then affirm them in that way and touch them in that way. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
It definitely does. It does. So for anybody who is a late arrival, we're talking about Love and Marriage, the Grown Up Edition 2.0. We are about midway through this conversation. We talked about emotional intimacy. Pastor Jason, you touched on a little bit on physical intimacy, but because we are people of faith, why is spiritual intimacy just as important as the other labels? Because culture will tell you, you got to test drive the car. You need to do all of these things before you get into a serious relationship. And I mean, there are people who are inside of the church who still have that same prioritization of, hey, I'm going to go this, and this. And then somewhere down the line, we'll talk about spiritual intimacy. And one, I would like you to talk about why it is as important as the others, and then how can couples nurture it?
So I think spiritual intimacy, your faith is the foundation of your marriage. The foundation of your marriage is not just eros love, erotic love, but it's agape love, which comes from your spirit. Your faith is what connects you. I have a pattern that I live by. You find your purpose picks your path, and your path picks your people. And I had to find my faith, my purpose first. That picked my path, and that found my person. And so finding your person without a faith foundation is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Because your faith is what connects you. Your faith is what's going to keep you. And you have to stay in a place with God to build your faith, because that's one that's going to keep you in tough and bad times is what keeps you in your purpose. So the spiritual intimacy comes from you. Man, you got to connect spiritually. There has to be a faith connection that you both have, because that's what actually brought you together. Not just a physical attraction. Your physical attraction, what's caused you to notice that person, but what puts you in that space, I believe, is when you find your faith and God puts you in a place to connect with him.
Can I add one thing to that too? I think it's so important. And when we're thinking, so we always think about spiritual intimacy and growing in spiritual, where we pray for one another, where we, consecrate with one another, whatever that looks like for your read the Bible with one another, whatever that looks like for you. But I think there's one thing that we can't forget. Spiritual connection also means we're connecting with other people spiritually. So I think it's so important that you find other couples that are also spiritually going the same route that you're going, and connect with them, talk to them about, build community with them about your marriage. I think we forget that piece of it. And it's amazing when we do, like when we have our marriage ministry and we're connecting with other couples in that moment, talking about marriage and love and God and whatever that looks like. When you come home, it's a little bit more intimate for us because we've met with other couples that's also, going in the same direction. So you don't want to forget your community. I think it's so important in building that.
And here's the thing about spiritual intimacy. I don't come home as a pastor. That's the role I occupy in church.
Mm-mm.
She's not a first lady.
Mm-mm.
I'm a man who has a spirit, a soul, and a body. So that's Jason, not hiding behind my role as a pastor, because I think it's so easy for us as church people watching this to hide behind our role.
Right.
And I've got a mature gift. I can preach at a level I'm not living.
Mm-hmm.
I can preach faith at a level that I'm not experiencing. But this faith that we're talking about is who I am as a person, not my gifting, not my role, but who I am as a man, developing that faith and being spiritually intimate there.
I don't want pastor in the bedroom with me. I want Jason in the bedroom with me.
Yeah.
I want my husband in the bedroom. Who's the man I fell in love with? That's who I want in the bedroom with me for intimacy.
Yeah.
I want pastor when we bring. Not any other one. You muted, Trish.
All right, froze. And while you got it, and while we're talking, there's probably some couples who are dating who are watching this. It starts. I don't think you marry much better than you date, and I think you can start with those principles when you're dating. Like, how do we connect? Like, what when they talk about the things of God? I'm not talking about just reading your Bible 24/7, but where are they going? And like, what is God speaking to them? Where's their faith level at? Because it's going to be very hard for you to get married to somebody that's negative, they're toxic, they got all this stuff in their spirit, and they don't really have a connection with God. That when you down, because marriage is not 50-50.
Right.
When you down, can they lift you? When you are up, can they celebrate with you? Are they jealous of you? Are they envious of you? That stuff is not mental. That stuff is not physical. That's a spiritual thing. When people have that stuff in their heart and you are progressing and they got something, this little bite about you, they can't really compliment you. They can't really celebrate you. If they cannot cheerlead you, they are not on the same faith level as you.
No.
If they are competing with you, if they are just, no, you want somebody who, man, they do what God calling you to do. And you want somebody that don't drag you down in faith. They want somebody to push you in faith. And if they're not there, tell them this. Don't go in part, stay in neutral, because you want somebody to grow with. Because we all don't start where we finish.
No, we don't. And understanding that I brought luggage. I don't want to say baggage, but I brought luggage into our relationship. Jason brought luggage into our relationship, things that we had already packed in this luggage that we were bringing to this relationship, some good, some bad, some needed, some not. And so you have to determine and talk to that partner, what is the luggage that you have? Some comes from other relationships. Some of that luggage, whether good or bad, comes from your family, from culture, from who you're around. And so you have to unpack that luggage, the good and the bad, to really discover, is this something I want to live with? Is this going to help me build my faith? Is it going to help me build my intimacy? Is it something I want to take with this person for the rest of my life? And only you can determine that.
I think one of the biggest things for a relationship is, do you honestly respect that person? Can you go to them for advice when they talk? Do you genuinely listen to them? Are y'all friends first, and that friendship caught a fire, and now you're in a relationship? You got to honestly be able to bounce off that person.
Right.
Do you consider them an equal? Do you consider yourself better than them? Like, I respect who Barbara is as a person, her not just her drive, but her intellect, her walk with God. You have to genuinely respect that in another person. And the reality is, a lot of people don't respect that in their significant other. Trisha, you still there? I'm about running out of words, so.
Oh my goodness. Is there any questions? I don't see any questions in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us some questions as well. I will say this, another part of intimacy, and Jason was talking about being there for each other. I just experienced something today that was very difficult for me. I got some news that I wasn't really ready to get this news. I'm very driven in my career. I love my career, and I like moving forward in my career. And one of the things that I received today was something I was really looking forward to. It was going to make some changes into our family financially, and make some good changes financially with our family. And I got slapped with this thing today that was devastating. And, for me, because I'm so driven, sometimes I can go back and just kind of go into myself and kind of self-reflect and kind of push everything else away until I do my own self-reflection. And that's sometimes not always a good thing. And so one of the things that I end up doing was, in that moment, I automatically called Jason and told him, hey, I got some news today. And he was able, and I was going I'm getting ready to go do this. I'm getting ready to go do that. I'm getting ready to make this change. I'm getting ready to move in this direction. And he was like, hold on, wait a minute. This one setback is not going to change where you're going and where you need to head in your career. And so he was able to talk. That's intimacy for me. That was something that I was able to go to him, and he provides spiritual guidance for me in that moment where I was ready to melt down. And that's intimacy to me as well.
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
I saw a question in the chat too.
Oh, okay. So let's do that. And then I can come back to the question because I'm a note taker. So I wrote my question down. So the question in the chat for everybody who cannot see it basically is asking Pastor Jason. Let me make sure this is the right one. Okay. Yes. How do you pick the right one? And this is actually interesting because Pastor Jason, earlier you said that many people don't marry better than they date. So that's a good question.
So for a believer, and talk to believers, are they saved?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do they have a relationship with God? Do they have genuine love? Do they want to be in a relationship with you? Do they know who they are? And are they willing to put in the work to be in a relationship? Because a lot of people don't have a relationship. They have a burden. A relationship is two people working to go in a direction. It's not you dragging somebody somewhere they don't want to go. So do you have, all right, are they willing to put in the work in themselves individually and to us as a couple? And when listen, you can't change a person.
Right.
And when a person refuses to change, a lot of people think my relationship will get better when you start doing this. You can't make that, you can make them aware of things that impact you, but everybody has to be willing to work on themselves. And that's an important part of you finding the one for you. Is this compatible for you? But you don't know what's compatible for you till you know you. Until you know what shuts you down, till you know what makes you go. And are you willing to grow and mature and allow somebody to challenge you?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That was good. That was good. So this actually is a good segue. So you were talking about you won't know what's good for you until you know what shuts you down, et cetera, et cetera. So you mentioned both, Lady B, you mentioned that when you come into a marriage, both people have luggage, right? They have things that they bring with them. And unpacking it between the comment about you guys talking about being able to unpack whatever's in your luggage and decide what is important to keep, what is important to let go. And Pastor Jay, you mentioned something at the very top of the session where you said that marriage is your own personal mirror and it's your true mirror. I have a twofold question. My first question is, how do you know, or how can a person do some self-analysis to identify that they're a safe place for their partner to actually unpack their luggage and they're not going to be a bull in the china shop? Because when you're unpacking stuff, whether it's there, like you said, Lady B, due to your family history, or it's something even more complicated, like maybe shame, or you're dealing with something that you feel like, I'm vulnerable. How can a person do that self-assessment and be honest to know if they are a safe space for their partner to actually unpack?
He wants to go first, and I'll jump in.
I'll let her go at this. Two things. Do I allow myself to be challenged, and how do they challenge me? You can't just go all in. You got to know that person's personality, what shuts them down. You create an environment for them to talk that's conducive for them to talk. Then I got to be open to being challenged, because Barbara said it right. We all bring luggage into a situation, and we all bring a story. But here's the part about the story we bring into our marriage. I only bring my side of the story.
Absolutely.
There's another side to that story that I got to be willing to see. Wait a minute, it isn't just the way I see it. And I got somebody to let me see the other side of that, because we can always paint a story and put ourselves as the victim, as the one who got done wrong, instead of allowing somebody to say, wait a minute, let's look at the other side of this and let's work and grow and change that.
I don't know if I can add anything to that, except for I think, when we think about going into a relationship and unpacking your luggage, as I unpack my luggage, how are you responding to me as I unpack that luggage, right? Whether it's good or bad, how are you responding? And is your reaction going to totally shut me down, like you said?
Absolutely. Or
or is it going to help me to grow? Are you going to support me? Because we are, my luggage, what I'm bringing to this in my luggage, it's important to, or it kind of defines me in some way. And so help me understand, are you going to shut me down when I bring up this luggage? Or are you going to support me and help me grow to really discover what needs to be kept in this luggage and what needs to be discarded.
Yeah. And the thing too, not only are we married, but we also brothers and sisters in Christ. So when I'm listening to her story, I can't just listen as a husband trying to fix something or with my insecurities. Because you both dated before that person, you bring all that stuff to the story.
Right.
I can't throw her past back in her face.
Yes.
What's only valid in a marriage is not your past, it's your patterns. Your patterns is how you move consistently. Your past is how you have moved in the past. So it is illegal for me for her to unpack something and me to throw that back in her face, or her to throw something back in my face, because then I ruin that safe space when I do that.
No more safety at that point.
It is no more safety, because you're going to weaponize the things that I share with you, and I'm not going to share with you anymore. And you can't get mad with me when I don't.
Right. You have weaponized me. You shot me where it hurts the most. So I think when you're unpacking, you have to make sure that you are providing a safe place for that person continuously.
This is so good. I feel like we could be here for another 45 minutes to an hour. I do want to respect the time frame that we have. So if you are in the chat and you have any questions, we are about to wrap it up. So get your questions in right now, because we have about 5 more minutes. When you were talking about having, and thank you guys for all of the wonderful feedback that's been in the chat. We can see it. Thank you so much. When you were talking about, hey, I've demolished the safe space, we realize that not everybody who's going to be on this, on the replay, or maybe even people who are on the live, they may have different faith-based values, but they can still get some practical advice. How can people rebuild if they feel like, man, the last time I had that conversation, and no, I'm never having it again because I'm emotionally exhausted just thinking about attempting to have this conversation with her again, or attempting to have the conversation with him again. And one part of it might be, I actually demolished the safe space, but what if it's also, hey, I came to you with, I don't know, maybe you spend a lot, right? And then the person is like, well, I only spend a lot because of this. And now we have some actual physical resources that are damaged, as well as the emotional space that's been damaged. How can couples have some practical advice to rebuild some of these spaces and places that should be safe, but maybe aren't anymore?
Yeah. I think you got to own it. You got to own the fact that you want that safe space. And I think that's what you lead with. Hey, I want to be able to talk to you. But this is the reason. And just be saying, hey, listen, I don't want to argue with this. I just want you to hear me out. This is the reason why I don't. Because when I do talk like that, here's your response. It shuts me down. I didn't come to you to argue. I want to try to solve something. And you just own it. How it makes you feel. And then you got to watch how the person responds.
Yeah. One of the questions you asked, Trisha, and I don't know if we're going to get this, but it kind of goes to this, is like, what do you have and what advice would you give for people who maybe have gone through this and are struggling and ready to give up? Because at some points, some people are ready to give up, right? Especially when you're talking about finances and things like that. So I think when you do that, you always have to remember why you started and reflect on why you started, what brought you together in the first place, right? And then I think when you start thinking about that, that helps. But I think another thing is sometimes you're going to have to go out to an outside resource and seek counseling, because what happens in these situations is you're so focused on the problem and not the solution. You're just focusing on, this is what he does, this is how he does, he doesn't talk to me, he doesn't support me, but you're really not focusing on, okay, how can we make this solution come to where we can get back to a better place? And sometimes the outside person is going to be the only one to help you focus back on the solutions to help you get to a better place.
One of the things Barbara is good at, and a lot of people aren't good at relationships. We're good at winning a heart, but we don't have conflict resolution skills. Sometimes people think because they can fight or win an argument. And honestly, what it takes to win an argument is be a jerk. Don't care what the other person says and just spew something out, and you win an argument, but you lose the relationship.
Right.
Many of us lack communication skills. We lack conflict resolution skills. So as a result, what do? We shut down when somebody brings something up. We just go berserk. And then you find yourself tiptoeing around people's personalities because you just, man, I don't want this to happen. I don't want that. And you have a face off, man, go get you some skills. Learn how to be in a relationship. That's what to become one means. Becoming is learning. Learn each other. Learn how to talk. Learn how to communicate.
Learn what a healthy relationship is. I mean, that's simple. Learn what healthy relationships are. I think that's so important.
And here's the thing too. Let's quit demonizing each other. If you notice you have narcissistic tendencies, if you notice that you're controlling, if you notice you're manipulating, you don't have to just throw oil on that person and call it 21-day consecration on it. Be like, whoa, that's a toxic trait in my personality. When I'm doing that, all right, let me address that.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make you a demon, doesn't make you the devil, because we all got something we're dealing with.
Yep.
All of us got some type of toxic trait, and we got a superpower that we're dealing with. But you be able to recognize it. I do have some tendencies like that. I can be vain. I can be narcissistic. I can be controlling. I can be manipulative. I can be combative.
Own that.
And own it.
And own it.
That's
Own it with your partner. Have a conversation with your partner. I see that I have this toxic trait, and I'm going to need help identifying this. And then I need to counteract that with a healthy trait, because there's always a healthy trait that counteracts the unhealthy one and what that looks like. So if I'm disrespecting my partner every time in front of people or whatever that looks like, then how can I go back and respect them? And what does that look like?
Yeah.
And so understand that every unhealthy trait has a healthy counterpart.
Yeah.
We have one question that came from the chat, and it says, what advice would you give when you know that it's easy to shut you down because you dislike conflict?
It doesn't matter how you feel about conflict. Conflict can make your insides.
Yeah.
I think people who like conflict are jerks. It doesn't matter how you feel about conflict. It's learning the necessary tools on how to confront conflict.
Right.
Learning how to control your emotions and stay on course.
Yeah.
It's learning how, it's not how you feel. Because I hate conflict, or some people, I love it. It's not about how you feel about it. It's, do you know how to address it? Because at the end of the day, do you want to be married? Or do you want to be right?
Right.
Like, you got to value your relationship over your feelings. So it's learning how to address those. So man, read a book. Henry Cloud and John Townsend, they have incredible books on how to have tough conversations. Man, learn the skills on how to, and don't let the devil tell you you're weak because you don't like confrontation. Oh, I feel awful dealing with it.
Right.
But that's all right, because you don't want to hurt anybody. Just learn how to do it. And some of us, boy, we run head first as soon as you see conflict. Take a step back. And no, I don't want to hurt this person, but I want to address the issue. So don't beat yourself up for how you feel about conflict.
Hopefully that answered the question that came up in the chat. Thank you, Lady B and Pastor J, for this incredible session. I know we had so many more questions that we could have gone through and gone over. I do have one fun question that we can maybe end on. If your marriage was a movie genre, what genre would it be?
Genre?
Yes.
I don't know. I like.
Look, I already know what he's gonna say.
Yeah, I like 90s. Anything from the 90s.
Anything from the 90s.
Yeah.
Anything from the
early
90s.
It's not a genre.
Like, I don't know if it's a genre, but it's an era that I like.
That's the era he likes.
Yes. Okay. We'll take it. We'll accept it.
Take
Guys,
that. Yeah, take that.
we'll have to take it. I mean, it is what it is.
Sorry.
No. Thank you again for coming on. For everyone who is joining us for the first time or for the first time in a while, thank you for coming to Believers Faith Fellowship Online Campus. Tonight's session in honor of the month of love, and I think last week might have been Black Love Day, if I'm not mistaken, was Love and Marriage, the Grown Up Edition 2.0, featuring Lady B and Pastor J. They do such an awesome job leading all three campuses, and we were so excited to get them here. So if God put it on your heart to share this session with anybody, please do so. And until next time, please know that we are praying for you. We want you to engage with our online campus. We want you to connect with our online campus, and we want you to grow with our online campus. See you next time. God bless you. Good night.